Hello all, this is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3, and in this particular video, I'm going to talk to you about what is the best research method, and in particular, think about research methods for undergraduate, graduate, and then finally as a career in terms of research. So if you don't know me, I'm an associate professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There were so many people that helped me out that I wanted to pay the favor forward and help you out. All right, so what is the best research methods that you can possibly do? So the best ones are the ones that you leverage what you know, the ones that you enjoy, and the simplest and easiest to implement. So there's all sorts of different kinds of research methods that you do, right? So the basic sort of categories that you could sort of think about are qualitative versus quantitative. So qualitative are going to be things that are like interviews or going out and doing ethnography. So going out into the real world and actually studying real people and just being part of being part of the particular real phenomenon. And then the quantitative stuff generally is some sort of archival sort of research where you go and you actually dig up some data that's already available. So it's usually what's called secondary data. So this is data that is currently available on websites. Maybe it's some sort of government website or something like that. And then you just implement or sort of analyze the data and you sort of try to make sense of that particular data. So that involves a lot of, both of those are very sort of on either ends of the particular spectrum. Oh, and you would classify sort of experiments and things like that, as well as sort of quantitative methods. So, the easiest ones or the best possible ones that make sense for most people are the easiest ones that lend themselves to testing for you, right? So up front, generally, I would have to suggest that anything that is kind of intrusive in any sort of way, the qualitative, experimental kind of research, right? That you're actually going and making some sort of change or studying somebody or interacting with people or interacting with the environment. It's going to require a significant amount of upfront work. And this is just simply because sort of ethics and what's called institutional review board approval processes. So each university, each sort of college or institution that you look at has some sort of board that oversees and looks at whether the stuff that you're doing is actually legitimate and whether it's actually going to harm somebody in some sort of way. And they vary from institution to institution in terms of how rigorous they are. But generally, if you're doing anything that is intrusive or going and sort of seeking into the world, right? So that's what I mean by intrusive. It's going to require a lot more upfront work because you have to demonstrate that you are not doing anything that's sketchy. That's essentially at the end of the day. I know that somebody that's watching this would probably sort of say, well, that's not the right definition, but really that's what it is. Are you doing stuff that's sketchy and it's going to harm people? And they have to sort of think about that stuff. So they're going to make you go through and think about it a lot more so upfront. So in terms of undergraduate research projects, in general, the qualitative and the sort of experimental stuff is generally pretty hard to do because you just don't have enough time to do that unless your institution has sort of fast track processes. And sometimes in some labs, they have fast track processes because it's really, they know that it happens on a regular basis, or a certain couple of principal investigators, PIs, have certain, sort of processes available so that they can go and get this quickly done. Then you can get it a little bit more quickly done, but you should probably ask somebody at your institution in terms of how quickly you can get that particular done. So think about in undergrad, because it's just a short amount of time, and as well as like a master's or something like that, that just think that you have a condensed amount of time and really think about how quickly you can get that done. And so some places it's okay to go out and do sort of this interviewee kind of stuff without doing ethics, but you really should think about it and sort of just ask somebody that's at your institution in terms of what is the best possible that way. Just because it's time constraints, it's just going to take you a fair bit of time to go through that particular process. It always does. So imagine that, by the time you actually get this thing written up, the sort of protocol that you're going to sort of do, think about it, it's going to take a month or two at least. It always does. I know that seems like a long time, but it always does. by the time you actually get this written up, then you got to submit it. And then that process itself, even at a fast institution, you're probably looking at a month. That's pretty fast. Sometimes it could be from, and it could vary, but it could take up to 6 months or something along those lines, depending on where you are. So just expect that to happen when you're doing this. So that's what I would suggest in terms of undergrad. Really think about the things that are quicker. So that's probably going to be much more along the lines of some sort of archival stuff, where you're just doing simple statistics on some archival data that's available, secondary data that's available. So something that's on a website, for example, just analyzing that data and looking at it would be a lot more quicker, unless you need to sort of do in-depth interviews and things like that. Then you can maybe, then you it's just going to take you longer. Is what my point is. All right. So in terms of quantitative research methods, so it's a little tricky though, right? So it's not necessarily that the quantitative is the best, and I would highly, really play up your strengths, right? So coming back to it's what you enjoy, and the simplest and easiest that you can actually implement, right? So you really want to leverage what you know. If you don't have a lot of quantitative skills, don't worry about it. You can just do averages, or you can plot data and go to any of the top engineering schools, the top sort of science schools that sort of use data. It's all they're going to ask you to do is plot things for the most part. That's what you're trained in, is to plot data. I'm an engineer. That was my undergrad. And being sort of quantitative heavy and model heavy and all that kind of stuff. They always want you to plot data whenever you're doing this kind of stuff, because you see all sorts of really wonderful things when you do that. So it's a matter of just gathering the data and plotting it. And plotting it should be pretty simple and straightforward, where you are just plotting the relationship between something and something else, and then you just see what that is, right? So you just look up, maybe scatter plots and look up that, and that's going to help you. That's going to be the vast majority of the work that you actually have to do. But so in terms of quantitative research methods, this is going to require acquiring data. So finding the data, that's going to be a little tricky. You can watch some of my older videos in terms of that, and then performing some sort of analytical techniques to sort of look and analyze that particular data. So it could be regression, for example. That could be something like that, or just simple means or averages, looking at averages, and that all it's pretty fascinating once you start doing this. Once you start gathering that particular data and looking at it. But the key is with the quantitative, there is a lot of upfront work in the sense of knowing what the particular models that you can look at, the particular sort of analytical techniques that you can look at. There's thousands of this kind of stuff that you can do, and it gets really tricky to sort of pick and choose which ones to do. But once you sort of understand what the questions are that you're asking and looking at the different stuff that you're looking into, you start understanding the sort of quick and dirty tricks that there are. And there's tons of those kind of little quick and dirty tricks in terms of analyzing that data. So often what you want to do is, so the best people that do this stuff the best, around the world, they don't necessarily focus on the particular method. Some people do. Some people are methodologists, right? But most people are thinking about the theoretical sort of question and the theory that you're looking at, and trying to spend most of their time digging into what previous people have said in terms of the research. So that's what you should be thinking about, is digging into what previous people have done, and then getting into writing up what they've done. So most of your time should actually be focused on writing and developing theory, whatever that looks like for your particular field, and leveraging what that is. And then only a small portion of it is really research methodology and focusing on that. It's just simply because we get paid. So all the top researchers, so once you go through your undergrad, you go into graduate school and you do your PhD, and then you get into, you become a researcher. So you go and become a professor, or you work at a research institute. Most people don't get paid for analyzing data. They get paid for writing ideas and thinking about ideas. And I know that seems counterintuitive, but actually it does help in terms of analyzing your data, because it's really hard to analyze data when you kind of don't know what you're looking at. So think about this particular rule. If you spend 80% of your time thinking about what the problem is and only 20% solving it, it's going to be a lot more faster. And in fact, that's the general rule anyways, trying to spend, you spend the vast majority of your time thinking about what a particular problem is than what the solution is to that particular problem. And it doesn't matter what you're in, what particular field you're in. In fact, there's a really old economist that looked into this from Italy. The Pareto principle is really sort of thinking about that you should be spending the vast majority of your time solving the problem, thinking about what it is that you're looking at. And then after that, like coming up with the solution. And the solution's only a minor part of it. So we spend, and I've actually switched more as I've matured as a researcher. I'm not perfect. I'm still young. There's people that are way better than I am all over the world in terms of their research skills. But, as a person that's kind of maturing, I am becoming more focused on not doing the analytical stuff and really thinking about the particular theory. And the simple reason is that that's where the bulk of the work is. That's where all of the discussion lies. That's what the rest of the world worries about. So spending most of my time on writing and thinking about the particular idea, it gets a lot more done for bang for your buck than it is sort of focusing on the particular analytical stuff. I know that seems kind of weird, but that's really what the truth is, right? So if you're thinking of, you're a biologist, for example, and then you just start testing things randomly, well, you don't really know what you're looking at. So you have to spend a lot of time digging into the previous research to think about what it is that you're actually going to test. And then once you dig into what it is you're going to test, then you have to think about for a long time how you're actually going to test this and come up with some sort of theoretical way to test that, or some sort of focused way to test that. That's really what we're talking about with theory is coming up with what does everybody say, and then focusing on what it is that hasn't been done, and telling other people what it is that that hasn't been done and we haven't really explored. So the general design, the best research methods for you are always going to be the simplest and the easiest to explain, the easiest to implement. And the general rule that I go by, and it's like every single time this happens, I'm going to think it's too simple at the beginning. And then even though it's too simple, it's not simple enough. And you have to make it more simpler and focus more as you are building these particular research designs. I guarantee there is somebody out there that is going to be like, I don't understand this. Can you walk me through it? It could be the simplest thing in the world in terms of what you're trying to do. But and you're like, oh my God, like this is tripping you up. But there are, so your audience is really general, right? So your audience in the world, whatever that is, it should be thinking about somebody that just has really basic science skills or just really basic critical thinking skills. And then anything above that, don't assume that they know all of that kind of stuff. They probably don't. There's only a small audience that knows the particular thing that you're thinking about at this moment, whatever it is. And it's a really small audience. So you're going to say, I'm going to do interviews. Well, how many people actually do interviews in this world? Not a lot, surprisingly. And then you're like, well, I'm going to do this specific kind of interview. Well, how many people that do that? It's even smaller audience. And then you have to think about, okay, those people are got to be focused on the thing that you're doing and understand what you're doing. It's just, it's way easier. Go really, really simple and really basic. It's going to save you a tremendous, I can't stress this more than enough. It's going to save you so much time and hurt later on because you have to explain what you've done. And the more complicated, the more sort of, things that you have going on, the more difficult it is to explain. And unfortunately, that's the world that we live in. So you just have to make it simple. If you think you've made it simple enough, ask 10 people, ask your, 7-year-old cousin and see if you can explain what you're doing. If you can't explain it to your 7-year-old cousin, it's too complicated. I know that seems crazy. I guarantee you're going to think this is crazy, and this person, you're probably going to want to discount what I'm saying. Just coming from experience from time and time again, If it seems simple to you, it's not simple enough. You have to just keep making it more and more simple so that other people can read it. And there's tremendous benefits from that, not simply because of getting it through, explaining it to other people, but then other people are actually going to read it, right? So if your 7-year-old can pick it up, they're going to say, "Hey, that's kind of a cool experiment. I'm going to try to do that." And then they're going to run with that particular thing, right? So that's what you have to think about is the more basic you have it, the broader the audience you're going to have, the more impact that you're actually going to have. So the most famous research that's out there is generally really, really simple. It is not complicated in any sort of way. The more complicated it gets, the more that the audience shrinks. So it gets tinier, tinier, tinier. And the harder it is just to explain to people what the heck you're doing. So just make it simple, make it easy, and it's going to save you a world of hurt. And just do things that you really enjoy. So think of any project that you do, no matter in your undergrad or your graduate school. So your undergrad is going to take you probably about 2 months, 3 months to do. That's pretty short. Graduate school, imagine that you're going to take years, and for some of us, decades to do the particular research projects that you're working on. So just go simple, do things that you really love, and it's all going to work out. And leverage what you already know. So build upon what you already know as much as you can. And by all means, if you don't know something and you really love something and you really enjoy something, go explore it. Go see how to actually do that kind of stuff. It's not as hard as you think it's going to be. So that's all I wanted to talk about. Give me a thumbs up if you like this. If you like this video, and do subscribe to the YouTube channel. I do appreciate it. It's wonderful that you're actually following along. Take care and have a wonderful day.